Good evening. My name is Manzar, and today we have another segment of a conversation with women about global peace. I would like to give a little introduction about this gathering. It's a casual gathering, but this started it actually at Watermark Gallery about 2 decades ago, and we sort of expanded in another program and event in the name of Rumi and more, which is, you all know, Rumi was 13th century mystic poet. So we want to use his ideas and his way to approach global peace. And on that particular program, we had artists, musicians, writers, visionaries. And so all our efforts and purpose was to bring peace within individuals, community, and expand it through the world. And this gathering, which also we call projects for peace and possibilities, we invite women from all different backgrounds. So to teach one another, learn from one another, and to find peaceful solution toward this very global peace that at this time that we live in is a highly important. So today, uh, we have our guest is Heather Browne, and also we have Bathsheba Monk, which she's also a co-host here, an author and a publisher. I would like to read a few lines about Heather Browne, our guest today. Um, Heather Browne, an interfaith minister of wellness, offers timeless healing, connective interpretation of the divine design of body, mind, and spirit. Heather Browne has healed from 38 years of physical, mental, and emotional conditions and has successfully reverse engineered the complex nature of a fibromyalgia diagnosis into one of a calm body, peaceful mind, and light spirit. So we are opening the microphone first to Bathsheba Monk, please.
Hi, thank you, Manzar. Hi, Heather. It's nice to see you, ladies. I'm Bathsheba Monk, and I am the publisher of Blue Heron Bookworks in Pennsylvania. And we've been doing this for 6 years, trying to find stories. And one of the most exciting stories that we've come across was Heather Browne and her fabulous journey, her wellness journey, her journey to the light. And I think I'd rather have her tell us about this. And I just want to say one thing is, like, knowing Heather has been like the highlight of the last year, at least since I've met her. And I'm looking forward to, we're publishing her book, hopefully soon this year. And but before it comes out, I'm really anxious for people to get to know Heather and to hear her story. So Heather.
Oh, thank you, Bathsheba and Manzar, for hosting this beautiful event. I'm truly honored to be included in any initiatives related to peaceful projects, as I myself was challenged with chronic pain. And anyone who's experienced extended chronic pain is well aware that it changes us and it creates a dynamic where peace becomes very distant. And the longer that distance is actually engaged, the more difficult it is to, in fact, reconnect with what peace is supposed to feel like. And that was certainly my experience through decades of systemic disorder. Ultimately, I received a fibromyalgia diagnosis, but this wasn't before many other diagnoses. And it really required an opportunity for me to learn how to still my body, to create a calm body for myself, so that I could once again experience a quiet, peaceful mind. Um, the light spirit came from my slowly bettering my own mental, physical, and emotional wellness. So it wasn't a quick fix. It was definitely a journey of my own conscious creation. And it is, in fact, the results of which are what called me to interfaith ministry of wellness. Fibromyalgia is a highly associative disorder. In fact, it isn't even considered a disease technically. It's a bucket of multiple challenges that kind of fuel off of one another and really create some discordance as a central nervous system processing disorder that distances us from our own best discernments. Interestingly, what I discovered in my spirit led journey was that after putting my focus on healing my body, I found that my spiritual self began awakening, and I actually healed from codependencies through this process. That was not my original intent, but it certainly has been beautiful to experience a full washing of the challenges that I was struggling with.
Heather, if I may ask you a question, I know that I saw the number, I can't recall it offhand. There's a lot of people in the United States, not to mention the world, that are dealing with conditions that basically take up all their time and all their energy. And so that must impact on how you relate to the world, and global peace, which is the theme of this, must be affected by that.
Well, absolutely, Bathsheba, and that's an excellent point to make, particularly because I myself come from a background of public policy. And there is no greater environment from which to experience the dual nature of individuals in conflict than politics and politics today. This is definitely a contributing factor in my own lack of wellness, because I was really evidencing a codependency that I was directing towards my community. And it became very toxic to me. Um,
In what
it,
way? In what way, Heather, does it become
well,
toxic?
the emotions that come with belief in a system and faith in a system that is not easily comprehended by a constituency makes communication very difficult. So one can have the best intentions and be operating from that place of their best intentions, but the damnation that comes from the community because it's impossible to meet everyone's individual needs with limited
Right.
resources really makes things very complicated. And it has definitely been a a marker in my own recovery, because I've had to reconcile that with my husband being in public office. There's a lot of noise out there about politicians, and I do encourage people to be mindful of those blanketed statements because there are a great many individuals working within government, whether they're elected officials or not, that have very good hearts, that are stalwart in creating new and creative and manageable resources for those folks who suffer. It's very difficult to maintain that momentum
Mhm.
when one is being labeled as a magnificent problem.
Mhm.
I certainly never am are at my best when I'm feeling the judgments and the damnation of those within my universe. I don't think any of us are very successful in that particular regard.
Right. Um,
Well, that's very true. It resonates a lot within us what you just said about policy makings and decision making in different levels in society and institutions of any kind. But I think one thing that it is good to really look into is again back to what Bathsheba said that she's actually trying to do in her publishing company to listen to each other's story and actually see whoever that thinks a particular way or solutions that they have toward any problem within the society, see where they come from.
mhm.
Just
I
study their life
I
and where they come from, what are their intentions. So, in an open and very peaceful manner, we're not enemies of each other, disliking each other, but because simply we all are products of our environment, that we all have variety of environment we grew up. So, as a result, we construct or we design different approach within
Mhm.
our being toward problems that we were facing, and we see different solutions rather. So it is good really to listen to one another and
Mhm.
see where these ideas come from
Mhm.
and look into our egos, because some of these are driven toward our egos and we all want to be right, we all want to be acknowledged, which is fine. And it's the basic is to really come to the solution for the well-being of all.
Mhm.
So, and is again looking into our backgrounds, looking to see where we come from, how we grew up, what was our experiences through the childhood and later on, and see what we have done with this length of time that we have had experience variety of confronting whatever that has been in our path,
Right.
and find really peaceful again, peaceful solutions.
But that's what impressed me so much and attracted me to Heather's story was that she looked beyond the normal uh, toolbox that we're given when we have medical problems or even emotional problems, and she looked inside herself for the answers, and I found that to be incredibly inspiring. And the only thing, and maybe Heather can speak to this, is that not all of these are like sanctioned um, by insurance companies. Let's be honest. There's some things are, some things aren't, and but you made the courageous step of appealing to everything that was around you. So I'd like to know how you found the nerve to do that, frankly.
Well, to be truthful, Bathsheba, it wasn't nerve so much as it was hitting rock bottom and really reaching a dead end. Um, my doctors ultimately were encouraging that I apply for disability.
Mhm.
And that was a marker for me to spread myself outside of the system's norms. And
Mhm.
I began engaging in complementary care. And I like to remind physicians that even meditation has, in fact, been funded since the 70s in the form of Lamaze breathing and childbirth.
Mm-hmm.
But it did take a great deal of years for the data to be captured and then negotiated for that coverage. Public
Mm-hmm.
policy moves very, very slowly. And I think this is part of why so many are discomforted, myself included, with
Mm-hmm.
our current time because things are changing so rapidly in response to pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And truthfully, my experience has been that with fibromyalgia as a central nervous system processing disorder at its core, my inner senses of connection were very, very disoriented from years and years and years of chronic self,
Mm-hmm.
you know, distraction.
Right.
So, I learned at the age of 50, early in my active recovery, that I had a condition called aphantasia. And until then, I didn't even know the condition existed
Mm-hmm.
because it exists under the radar, but it's a condition that actually prevents the visualization within the mind's eye. So
Uh-huh.
effectively, I had been blind in my mind's eye for decades and didn't even know it because I assumed other folks couldn't see visually either.
Right.
That was
Um,
a massive relief for me because I now had something that I could put my focus on improving.
mhm.
Through that process, I also learned of my anxiety, which I had never even been diagnosed with. Um, and quite frankly, I think that the statistics regarding anxiety are highly underreported because I think that we all normally experience this conflict within our mind.
Mhm.
And when it becomes loud and abusive and destructive and distracting, in fact, it is anxiety.
Mhm.
So I look to myself as needing to reorient my inner visioning, my inner listening, and I definitely had to work on how I communicated because I had been so cognitively affected by this journey that my brain was engaged because of the chronic pain itself.
Hmm.
So I really had to reorient what I was feeling in order to open those expressive channels for my senses to provide me the discernment that was most healthy for me.
Mhm.
And it's been a, a remarkable journey. I do
Mhm.
believe that science is moving into a great deal of new technologies to offer as it relates to wellness. But I do believe that it's our own sovereign choice to
Mhm.
not only focus on bettering our physical and our mental self, but also our resiliency from our emotional state of self. And this is kind of where the trauma element and the biases that we carry through culture and even our genetics play a
Mhm.
very, very meaningful role.
Mhm. Well, I'm
Yeah.
interested when you were talking about the aphantasia, and since there's an artist here, a
Oh, yes.
renowned artist, what so what was that like when you started to recover some of that sense? I mean, with art, and did that change? Did your prior taste or whatever you had in art, did that change? Did you find?
Oh, it did. In fact, um, we tend to think of death as being physical, and I understand that completely. But really, I experienced an emotional and a mental death from which
Hmm.
I reiterated myself in moving forward. And I think that's an important distinction for folks to have. In fact, I embrace a death every day because when I wake up in the morning, I want the value of what I've learned the prior day to be part of what I'm holding dear to me. So I do teach a process of release and renew before each day. Um, but in answer to your question, Bathsheba, it was unsettling and without context, because when you're blind and suddenly you're seeing things in your mind's eye, you really don't know if you're seeing them three-dimensionally or interdimensionally without
Right.
the context of the larger picture. And that is the core interest of my work, is that, again, the intuitive answers always existed within me. Um, but for the mysterious reasons of timing, I wasn't open to this receipt until I could experience that sensory alignment. When I did, everything changed. I see the world differently. Without the use of drugs, I experience a visual vibrancy to nature and to art and to music, and I embrace it.
Yes, I would like to mention about what you just said about art, which this is what I have been doing and producing and being creative in imagery and imaging, the power of images. As I'm sure you know, Carl Jung, the psychiatrist that was working with Sigmund Freud, and of course they separated, went to different directions. He also painted for 8 years. He has a book, actually the Red Book, about that process, that how art has helped him, and he introduced this process to his patients, to how finding the authentic or true self, sort of a peeling this onion and to find oneself. And that what has been for me for 30 years as I have been painting. And the beauty of it, that is, through this process you see yourself. It's like you see, is a mirror here. You see yourself in this process, and it seems you find solution for your own individual peace process. Also extending it and telling others, hey, why don't you try this? See how it works. Because we all are, again, individuals, and we can have this approach in a variety of levels, and because not one fits all, we all find our own particular solutions in a way, so to experiment rather. So based on that, as I just earlier mentioned, to bring in a comprehensive approach to our well-being. Not only that this body to becomes healthy, but uh, is to be able to thrive and to be able to find out ways that we are sort of, again, understand oneself and others. When you understand yourself, usually that's a sort of a time that you are able to understand others in a way. When you know yourself, so you are able to know others or understand others. So this project of peace and possibilities, and Rumi, back again to Carl Jung, that actually knew this modern psychology that now we call it spiritual psychology. They bring in a lot of traditional or ancient wisdom of actually, like Rumi and many mystical poets, writers of that era, bring this understanding to our healthy self, how we can It's so incredible. And of course, if, as always, I have things around here reading this big red book of which is Coleman Bark translation of Rumi is the great masterpiece celebrating mystical love and friendship.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing to pay attention here is the friendship and the
Yeah.
trust among people that we can trust
Mm-hmm.
each other and make friends and,
Mm-hmm.
and be able to engage with one another and help in each other on
Mm-hmm.
an individual level and a team and a community. See, one thing we lack in Western societies in general, we all are busy, we all are busy trying to do things, 100 things at a time. It's like we lose the contact with one another. We lose it with us, even. See?
Well,
Yes, it's
it
true.
definitely is with us, and really that's from where I work, Manzar. I agree with you 100%. Before we can collaborate with others, we first need to learn how to collaborate with ourselves from within ourselves.
Yes.
And
Mm-hmm.
this is the natural succession or progression into the work of codependency and ultimately addiction and conditioning of thought and feeling and sensation and patterns. I personally have experienced that fibromyalgia is, in fact, an addiction of its own sort. It is a
Mm.
conditioning of disorder that
Mm.
becomes invisible to us. And throughout the course of time, my understanding is, through my experience, that the body develops its own sense of dementia,
Mm.
expressing itself through chronic pain. And by no means am I implying here that that there's a magic wand that
Mm.
can transform illness into wellness. What I do believe, however, is that wellness invites insight. And we do need to differentiate what health and wellness are. Health is something that we receive, and wellness is something that we give to ourselves. And I am passionate about that process, and I'm here to help others who are open to learning how to calm their body, to create peace within their mind, and to create that sensation of a light spirit so that we're not carrying all that density and baggage of the
Mm-hmm.
emotions that we don't even know are in us anymore because it
Mhm.
is so normalized.
Mm-hmm.
So
Just
that
natural
those
act of humanity.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
those feelings, conditions, and all, we are not all necessarily individually are responsible for it. But as what psychologists and ancient wisdom says, it's a collective consciousness that comes from centuries, thousands of years back, and they have been through our genes or generations. We have learned, we have nurtured or nature all mixed up and be who we are. So we all really collectively have worked toward that. More or less, we all are involved. We are all in it. Just like a pandemic right now.
Absolutely. We're not untouched by our neighbors.
Right. Well, I see we have 2 more minutes here,
Mm-hmm.
Bathsheba and Heather. If you like to wrap it up, and so next time, next Monday, we will have another guest, and so we go from there.
Yes, yeah. I wish we had a whole hour to talk to you, Heather, but I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you soon. And this has been fabulous. This is a great initiative, Manzar. I know you've been doing it for a while, but I'm new to it, and I appreciate you inviting me
Beautiful.
again. Yeah. So anyway, so we'll see you next week, and we have another guest, a shaman who's lined up, and that should be interesting. And so until next week, thank you, Heather, so much for joining us, and Manzar. And so we'll say good night.
Thank you both.
Thank
Good
you
night.
both. Peace
Thank
be with you
you.
both.
Thank you.